The invisible enemy within. Ever pondered how a silent enemy within us might be sabotaging our success? This sin adversary is not a tangible foe, but a mental construct, a product of our own minds. It's called ego, an unhealthy belief in our own importance. It's the arrogancy that whispers in our ears, the self-centered ambition that drives us to put our needs above all else. It's that petulant child inside every person, the one that chooses to have its own way regardless of the cost. The need to be better than, more than, recognized for, far past any reasonable utility. That's ego. But before we enter into this, consider subscribing to our YouTube channel and leaving a comment on your views about the ego. Thank you. It's the sense of superiority and certainty that exceeds the bounds of confidence and talent. It's when our self-confidence becomes arrogancy, our assertiveness becomes obstinacy, and our self-assurance becomes reckless abandon. This, my friend, is still ego in its purest form. In this way, ego is the enemy of what we want and of what we have, of working well with others, of building loyalty and support, of retaining and repeating your success. It repulses advantages and opportunities like a magnet repels the same pole. It's a magnet for enemies and errors, a silent saboteur lurking in the shadows of our minds. Ego is the root of almost every conceivable problem and obstacle, from why we can't win to why we need to win all the time and at the expense of others, from why we don't have what we want to why having what we want doesn't seem to make us feel any better. Yes, with every ambition and goal we have, big or small, ego is there undermining us on the very journey we've put everything into pursuing. It's the silent saboteur always present, always ready to strike when we least expect it. We must understand that, like a shadow, ego is always there even though we may not always see it. But it's a part of our human nature and a part of us. But by recognizing its presence and understanding its nature, one can learn to control it rather than letting it control us. We can learn to use it as a tool for growth rather than a weapon for self-destruction. Let us consider this comparative analysis between egoism and alcoholism. Imagine egoism as a form of intoxication, an intoxication that doesn't cause a hangover, but a lifelong hangover. Much like the alcoholic who reaches for the bottle in times of stress, the egotist reaches for self-aggrandizement. Both egoism and alcoholism provide a temporary escape, a fleeting euphoria that masks deeper issues. They both create an inflated sense of self, a distorted reality where the individual is the most important entity. In the mind of the alcoholic, the world is a blurry haze where the consequences of actions are ignored all forgotten. Similarly, the egotist lives in a self-created bubble where the feelings and needs of others are disregarded. Both are forms of self-absorption, a refusal to look beyond oneself. Egoism, like alcoholism, creates a disconnect. It severs the ties that bind us to the world around us. It creates a chasm between us and others, making it difficult to build meaningful relationships. After all, how can we truly connect with others if we are constantly putting our own needs and desires above theirs? Just as alcoholism can lead to physical and mental health problems, egoism can lead to an emotional and psychological damage. It can cause stress, loneliness, and a lack of fulfillment. It can make us blind to our faults, preventing us from growing and improving. Moreover, both egoism and alcoholism can lead to a sense of entitlement. The alcoholic feels entitled to drink, ignoring the harm it causes. The egotist feels entitled to be admired and respected, regardless of their actions. However, there is a stark difference. While the effects of alcohol are temporary, let's hear this very well, the effects of the ego are long-lasting. It's a chronic condition, one that can only be cured through self-awareness and humility. So in the end, both egoism and alcoholism lead to self-destruction, though in different forms. They both rob us of our potential, our relationships, and our happiness. They keep us from living a fulfilling and meaningful life. Right now, let's go to how we nurture this enemy within. We are going to call this the comfort of the ego. How do we nurture an enemy within? The answer is very simple. Comfort. You see, ego is the master of deception. It presents itself as a safety net, a shield, a fortress of our own making. It whispers in our ears, telling us that we are invincible, that we are superior, that we are the center of the universe. It lulls us into a false sense of security and self-importance, making us feel good about ourselves even when we should not. Indeed, ego is like a warm cup of cocoa on a winter's day, providing constant gratification. It soothes our fears, quiets our insecurities, and bolsters our self-esteem. It tells us what we want to hear, when we want to hear it. It's the voice that whispers, "You are perfect just the way you are. You don't need to change." But here is the kicker. Ego is a short-term fix with long-term consequences. It's like applying a band-aid to a deep wound. Sure, it might stop the bleeding for a while, but it won't heal the injury. And the more we ignore the wound, the worse it gets. Think about it. When we let our ego run the show, we become blind to our faults and shortcomings. We stop listening to feedback and start believing that we are always right. We become defensive, arrogant, and self-absorbed. We build walls around ourselves, shutting out anyone who dares to challenge us. In the long run, this can be damaging. It stunts our personal and professional growth. It strains our relationships. It prevents us from reaching our full potential. It keeps us stuck in a state of perpetual self-delusion. So, why do we cling to our ego? Because it's comfortable, it's familiar, it's safe. But just as a bird can't learn to fly if it doesn't leave the nest, we too can't grow if we don't step out of our comfort zone. Ego, like a warm blanket on a cold night, provides comfort but can stifle growth if not kept in check. Now, some of you might be there wondering, asking yourselves that, should we stop aspiring for goals, for our visions? No. Let's get into aspiring despite the ego. Here we are setting out to do something. We have a goal, a calling, a new beginning. Every great journey begins here. Yet far too many of us never reach our intended destination. Ego, more often than not, is the culprit. We build ourselves up with fantastical stories. We pretend we have it all figured out. We let our star burn bright and hot only to fizzle out. And we have no idea why. These are symptoms of ego, for which humility and reality are the cure. Every journey starts with an aspiration. But how often does ego derail or divert our journey? As we set out on our personal quests, be it in business, arts, sports, or any other field, we are filled with a sense of excitement and anticipation. We have a goal, a vision, a dream that we want to turn into reality. This is the stage where our aspirations are at their peak, but lurking in the shadows, ready to pounce, is our ego. Our ego can be a cunning trickster. It fills our minds with fantastical stories and unrealistic expectations. We start to believe that our journey will be smooth, that success is guaranteed, that we are destined to make our mark. We start to imagine the applause, the acknowledgement, the admiration that will come our way. And in doing so, we are setting ourselves up for disappointment, because the reality of any journey is that it's filled with challenges, setbacks, and failures. Our ego doesn't like to acknowledge this reality. It doesn't like the idea of struggle and hardship. It wants to believe that we are exceptional, that we are above the ordinary, that we don't need to put in the hard work or face the tough times. But this is a fallacy, a dangerous illusion that can lead us astray. Instead of focusing on the hard work that's required, the learning that needs to be done, the patience that needs to be developed, our ego makes us focus on the end result. It makes us impatient, it makes us rush, it makes us take shortcuts. And in doing so, it often leads us down the wrong path. To reach our intended destination, we need to keep our ego in check. We need to stay grounded, to stay humble, to stay focused on the process rather than the outcome. We need to acknowledge the challenges that lie ahead and be prepared to face them. We need to understand that success is not a given, that it requires effort, perseverance, and resilience. In other words, we need to aspire not with an inflated sense of self, but with a realistic understanding of what it takes to achieve our goals. Because when we do that, we are not just dreaming, we are doing. And that's the only way to turn our aspirations into reality. To reach our intended destination, we need to keep our ego in check still. Let's also get into the steps to conquering the ego, all what is needed to conquer this ego. Overcoming ego is not about exterminating it, but about achieving a balance. Just as a masterful conductor directs an orchestra, we too must learn to harmonize the various aspects of our being. And one of the most powerful yet challenging instruments to manage is our ego. One strategy for keeping the ego in check is self-awareness. Before we dive into self-awareness, I kindly request you to subscribe to our channel if this is helpful, so that you'll also get notified on all the upcoming knowledge. Thank you. This requires us to keep outside ourselves and view our actions and thoughts from an external perspective. It's like becoming a spectator in our own lives. Our reactions, our motivations, our successes and failures. By doing so, we can see when our ego is trying to take center stage and gently guide it back into the ensemble. Number 2, humility. Humility is another key player in this. Living in harmony with nature is not a destination but a continuous journey. Recognizing that we are part of a larger whole, that there are things we don't know, and that others can teach us, helps keep our ego from swelling out of proportion. It's about understanding our place in the grand scheme of things, acknowledging our limitations, and celebrating our strength without letting them define us. The third one is empathy. The ability to understand and share the feelings of others is another essential tool in managing our ego. When we empathize, we step into another's shoes, seeing the world from their perspective. This helps to dissolve the walls our ego might build, allowing us to connect more deeply with others and the world around us. But remember, it's all about balance. The ego isn't inherently bad. It can drive us to achieve, to stand up for ourselves, to strive for what we believe in. However, like a powerful instrument, if not tuned correctly, it can disrupt the melody of our lives. The key is to recognize when our ego is serving us and when it is hindering us. By cultivating self-awareness, humility, and empathy, we can strike the right chord, creating a symphony of life that is harmonious and fulfilling. While concluding, remember, The ego is not your enemy if you learn how to steer it in the right direction. It's a part of you. It's a part of me. It's a part of all of us. And when balanced in check, it can be a powerful ally on your journey towards self-improvement and success.